They yanked me into the back seat before I could get my keys out. Fear made my fingers go numb around the leather of my journal. I shoved it to my chest with two trembling
You
hands.
used me,
"Get
Luca.
down,"
How
someone
could
barked.
you?
The man at the
I'm sorry,
driver's shoulder
Elise. I
slammed
never
the
meant to
door,
hurt you.
and the cold rain hammered the roof. Within the first heartbeat, the concrete problem stood clear. I had been taken, and I had to prove the mistake before something worse happened. I tasted metal and wet wool. The light from the street tore across the tinted window in a shredded stripe. I tried to speak, but my jaw moved slowly, as if my mouth had forgotten its job. That fear, sharp, precise, practical, pushed me toward action. I hooked a foot under the seat, reached for the door handle, and tugged. A gloved hand closed over my wrist and held Elise. The man said, the name not a question but a recognition that made my throat go dry. He it in the low, measured voice of someone who did not hurry his words, "Don't move, Elise. It's safer here." I had not told anyone my name on the street. I had not told anyone my name in years. I am Elise Marino. I keep a worn leather journal in my bag and I write letters no one sees. Nights I fold sentences into creases and imagine answers I am too afraid to ask for aloud. I am careful with strangers and with promises. I keep distance because I have taught myself how to live with less pain by receiving less. That is the baseline, a careful, private life. The concrete problem now was obvious. Someone had decided I belonged to them for reasons I did not yet understand. The car slid through an alley and the engine hummed like a low animal. Two men in dark coats shifted in the front seats. When the door in front opened and a tall man stepped back, he filled the small space with a straight, careful posture. He wore a coat cut to his shoulders and a face that had stopped easy smiles. He looked at my hands at the journal, and then down at my wrist where the faint scar near my eyebrow tightened the skin above my left eye. He did not pick me up like a prize. He studied me as if he were inspecting a page he recognized. "Marco, you said target secured." The man asked. His voice had the evenness of someone used to giving orders. Marco answered with a single clipped line, "Mistake, meh." Moretti, I heard the name in the dark, and then I heard the press of my heart against my ribs. Fear shifted. It was no longer only fear of strangers. Now it included a name tag I had read in newspapers and seen in the bottoms of other people's fearful glances. Alessandro Moretti, Alex, stood by the car. I had seen his picture once in an old article. Broad shoulders in a tailored suit, the kind of presence that made waiters straighten. He spoke to me without moving his mouth much. "You carry papers at night, Elise," he said. "Why do you write?" I answered because I wanted to. I answered because my voice came out small and raw, to be heard. I said to say things I cannot say to anyone here. The sentence was both admission and defense. He did not laugh. He did not smile. He lifted the journal from my lap with a gloved hand, and the skin at my throat prickled where his fingers brushed the edge. Inside the sedan we moved into a room of quiet authority. Marco stayed near the rear door. Alex walked slowly into the light of an amber lamp placed on a small desk. He opened the journal with two exact fingers and found a folded loose paper tucked in the back pocket. He unfolded it without surprise and read two lines underlined. "I do not want to be answered." The letters sloped with small loops I had practiced since I was a child. Hearing him say that he recognized the handwriting should have felt like rescue. Instead, my chest tightened. Fear became suspicion. Why would a powerful man know my handwriting? Why would he pull me here and not simply hand me back? I moved to push up from the chair. Marco's boot blocked my knee. "Sit." "Marco." The word was short and physical. "Marco, Alex." He did not raise his voice. He set the paper on the desk and did not look at me. "You me this name before. You wrote letters once." His fingers smudged ink on the margin, as if he had pressed the paper to remember the feel. That small action, touching the ink, changed everything. My fear convulsed into anger. "You think you can keep me here because of a note?" I snapped. I was taken by mistake. "Leave me alone." My voice cut through the lamp light. I saw the way Marco's jaw tightened. I saw Alex's hand close, not on me but on the paper, as if the paper itself anchored him. Alex folded the corner of the paper and put it back into the journal. "I did not take you because of a mistake, Elise," he said. "I took you because you carried a name I needed to see up close." He kept his eyes on the pages and not on mine. The words hit me like a cold, direct push, another emotion shift, anger to cold shot. Sophia Bennett's number flashed on my phone before I could silence it. Elise, run now. Sophia on the line as if the phone were delivering a live warning. Her voice was breathless and urgent. Someone's following you. Get out of there, please. Elise. The call spurred me into motion. I stood and lunged for the door while Marco's knee stepped into my path. Stop, Marco. He put a flat palm against my forearm with pressure that left my skin tingling. Alex watched me with a slow, calculating look that made me feel small and observed. Sophia called. Alex? He the name like a test. Why would Sophia call? Who is following you? Someone in a car. I've been careful, Alex. I was careful, I said. The second half of that sentence cracked because the care I had practiced had failed tonight. I felt open and exposed. I don't belong to your world. I don't. Alex cut me off with a motion that showed both control and a strange gentleness. Marco, lock the doors. Keep the radio low. Sophia, tell her to wait where she is. He turned to me. Tell me the truth, Alice. Did you write letters for a man named Franco? I flinched. The name Franco pulled a bad memory, an older story of small kindnesses given in exchange for secrecy and silence. My voice went thin. No. I wrote to no one named Franco. I wrote to someone else. I wrote to no one I could name in person. That answer left me both lying and true. Marco stepped forward. We have men outside sweeping the area, he said. We will check the street. You stay here until I come back. Marco's short sentences were instructions that left me standing inside a room of decisions I did not make. He was a secondary presence who acted like a hinge. His choices dictated whether I could move. Marco left and the lock clicked. Left alone with Alex, I watched him fold his hands over the desk, his ring catching the lamplight. He lifted his head and finally met my eyes. When you write Elise, do you sign nothing? He asked. I answered honestly, no. I stop myself. I leave empty names. It's safer that way. My fingers found the edge of the journal and traced a line in the leather. The action calmed me enough to speak. I felt the trace of another emotion under the fear and suspicion. Curiosity. Curiosity warred with the old rules I had set for myself. He reached out and pushed the journal toward me. There is a reply here. Alex, it is unsigned. Someone answered you, someone with a scar on his jaw and a glove in his pocket. He wrote that he would watch over the writer. I did not understand. My stomach clenched. Who would reply to a stranger at night? Who would claim a stranger? I demanded. My voice rose small and fracturing. Why would you? Alex's eyes did not change tempo, but his hands folded and unfolded, because sometimes we recognize a hand without wanting to put a name to it, he said. He spoke as if he were explaining rules of geometry or reorderings of furniture, because I read your handwriting on a letter once, years ago, and I have been looking for the person who used it. That revelation shifted the floor under me. Fear bent towards something quieter and stranger, confusion. Before I could answer, a rapid series of bangs rattled the building, the lamps flickered. Footsteps thundered in the stairwell. The leather lamp shook where it sat on the desk. Marco's voice came from the doorway like a cut in the air, shots on the roof. Move! The external event hit in the middle of our conversation and dragged us into motion. Adrenaline moved in the exact way fear had rehearsed in me. I snapped to a doorway, and Alex stepped between me and the stairwell as if his body were a line you could not cross. He did not shout. He moved. Glass cracked in a high rim of the roof window. A bullet tore through the corner of a bookcase and flung old paper into the lamplight. The room filled with acrid smoke and the sound of running feet. Get down, Alex. He pushed me behind the low arm of a wide leather chair. Marco returned with his pistol and a bleeding cut at the temple. Stay behind me, Alex me. The order was not ownership, it was strategy. He angled his body so his shoulders took the line that might have hit me. He fired back once and then dropped to the floor to check a wound to his own thigh. I heard the rapid exchange. Marco calling out positions, a radio static voice, and men shouting in names I did not know. A rival crew tried to take the safe house. One of their bullets hit the metal railing near the roof and showered sparks into the rain. I felt a stinging spray of water against my cheek where the roof had been hit. My body moved with a new emotion. Raw, reactive terror, fear that pushed past anger or curiosity and turned into a single objective, survival. Alex crawled back to me and, without looking away from the stairwell, tore his handkerchief into a strip. Hold still, Elise, he said. Blood dotted his fingers when he bandaged my arm where a shard of glass had nicked my skin during the scramble. His hands were efficient and firm. He did not ask permission. Marco barked orders and returned fire. The men outside had stopped for now. Alex, Marco, breathless and sharp, we have them suppressed on the opposite stairwell. One man down. Sweep now, clear the roof. Marco's choice forced movement. He sent men up to check. Marco's quick decisions changed the direction of danger. His call kept us alive. He came back in and looked at me with a soldier's appraisal. "You okay, Elise?" he asked. I could not answer right away. My teeth ached from clenching. My arm stung where the bandage pressed. The fear that had started the night splintered into 3 tracks. Practical fear for immediate safety, suspicion of Alex's motive, and a hesitant, unwanted relief at the way his hands moved across my skin. That last feeling horrified me because it was close to gratitude. When the men returned and reported the roof cleared, Alex wrapped his hand in a clean towel. He sat close enough for me to see the thin scar along his jaw. There was no show of softness, only composed, small gestures. He shifted his coat and offered the towel to me. "We are not safe in this house for long," he said. "You will go with men to another room until we move you." His words were practical, not sentimental. I swallowed. My mouth felt like a dry page. Who were they? Why are they after me? I demanded. My voice hitched. The question was sharp and immediate. Marco and Alex exchanged a look. Marco answered first because his choices moved the plot forward. "They are tied to Moretti rivals. They think someone in our network spoke to someone you might know. We don't know exactly why you were on the curb, Elise. We only know you were not the intended target for tonight's hit." Marco's facts landed like metal. Alex's gaze dropped to an envelope still lying open on the desk. He picked up a small scrap with a fingerprint in blue wax. He held it as if it were a map. "You left a letter out in the world, Elise," he said. "You wrote things and then expected silence. You cannot expect that every reader will obey silence." The sentence was not an accusation as much as a statement of consequence. I felt the old rule of my life crack, the rule that writing alone kept me safe. I opened my mouth and then closed it. Words had been my defense. They had never brought me this close to arms that would protect or claim me. I could feel the pull of another emotion, stubbornness. I had trained myself not to give up how I lived. I shoved the stubbornness into words. "If you are keeping me here because you recognized handwriting, then return my journal and let me go with Marco to your other room. I'll leave. I will never write again if that's what it takes." The offer came out quick and hard. Alex's thumb brushed the smudge where ink had bled on the edge. He looked at me like he was weighing something heavy you hold in one hand. "You do not want to be answered," he said. He paused and then added, "Yet someone answered you at night." He promised to watch. I am the man who cannot let that promise sit unanswered. The line between protection and possession remained thin, but his voice contained a contained tone that suggested a history of promises kept for the wrong reasons. A radio crackled with new orders. Marco stepped toward the door, and the room felt momentarily like a stage where decisions were announced. "We move in 30 minutes. Marco, pack light, Elise. Bring your journal. Alex, you'll come with the escort. We move as one." His instructions removed choice. He had decided movement. He had placed me in the path of a group of men who would move me again. Alone for a moment with the journal open, I found a folded paper tucked between pages. The unsigned reply Alex had mentioned earlier. I smoothed it flat with fingers that still shook. The words were not flowery, they were short. "I saw you. I will not let you be alone." The voice that had written those lines felt both like a stranger and like a claim. Tears came because my chest refused to hold everything. I pressed a thumb to the ink and felt the grain of the paper where the writer's pen had hesitated. My hands fumbled. I lifted my head. Alex looked at me. "You were careful, because you feared what reply might demand," he said. He reached for my wrist again to steady my hand while I held the paper. His presence was a second action that made the feelings inside me split. One part fought to keep distance, another part wanted to fold into the protection his body provided. The men called for us to gather. Marco's voice was a blade of instruction. "Move now." I stood and tucked the journal under my arm. I left the lamp's amber pool and moved toward the stairwell with Alex at my side and Marco behind us. Outside, rain struck the pavement in hard little hammers. Men hustled past, checking doors. Sophia's name flashed again on my phone in a missed call. I thought of her voice telling me to run and felt gratitude, then a new worry. If she knew I had been taken, was she safe? We went down the stairwell toward cars waiting in a narrow lane. Alex held the journal against him in a way that looked like ownership and also like guarding. I kept my hand on my bag. The city smelled of wet stone and oil. When I reached the car, Alex opened the door for me. For a second he looked directly at me and said one line I could not ignore. "If you keep writing, Elise, you will make more men look for you. If you stop, you will keep them away." It was not a promise, it was a forecast. I did not answer on the step. I sat in the back seat, closed the journal to cover the reply, and felt the curve of my palm where his fingers had touched the paper. Marco slid into the front and told the driver where to take us. As the car pulled away, I pressed the unsent letter flat inside the journal and felt its edges against my ribs. That small physical action held everything. Fear, a newly stirring trust, and a question I had not wanted to name. When we reached the safe escort point, Alex stepped out before me and looked back. He simply, "You will not be alone tonight," no flourish, no claim beyond the sentence itself. Then he shut the door and the men moved me into the next room under Marco's orders. I sat at a small wooden table by a rain-streaked window and opened my journal again when the others cleared the corridor. Left alone, I found a new, thin paper folded under the journal's cover, a reply not in my hand and not with a signature, only a faint fingerprint pressed into the wax seal. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The line inside read, "I saw you already. I will keep watching." I folded it back without reading more. The paper landed in my lap like a small, heavy thing. I let go of the immediate urge to decide. Instead, I touched the scar by my eyebrow and breathed through what had happened. The seizure on the curb, the car, Alex speaking my name, Marco's orders, Sophia's call, the rooftop shots, the bandage on my arm. The unsigned reply pressed into my life. My fear had driven me to action. It had kept me alive. My suspicion had forced me to test the man who now claimed knowledge of my handwriting. My curiosity had made me look for meaning in the paper and in the lines he had left. A knock sounded at the inner door. Marco called, "Parcel from headquarters." "Hand it here." The sound was ordinary in a room that had not been ordinary a half hour before. I folded the reply and slid it into the journal's inner pocket. The knock repeated, firmer this time. That single, concrete action, a knock, brought the chapter to a close and pushed the next choice into motion. I stood, pressed the journal to my chest, and went to the door. An envelope slid under the safe room door. I yanked it through the gap and felt the paper bite the pads of my fingers. Fear made my hands shake as rain hammered the townhouse roof and my journal pressed against my ribs like a small, desperate shield. I did not expect replies. I expected silence, distance, the particular protection of being ignored. The envelope was plain, heavy, the flap glued down. Someone had spent time on this. Fear, the tight, specific fear that had followed me since the back seat, decided my first move. I folded the flap back with my thumbnail and read. Inside, a single page matched my handwriting. The first line repeated a sentence I had trusted only to the pages of the journal. "I count the minutes until I can be alone with a pen." The cadence was mine. My throat closed. I heard Luca at the door. His footsteps paused in the corridor and a shadow fell across the doorway like a question. "Elise." Luca's voice was low. He had been with us since the night they took me from the street. The night I almost dropped the journal when they shoved me into a glossy black car. I said nothing. I folded the letter back and clutched it to my chest. I had been living with a single rule since that night. Keep everything private, keep everything safe. That rule broke in 1 second when Luca put a gloved hand on the doorframe and read over my shoulder. "Someone slipped that under, miss," he said. He spoke my name the way he said watch names, with attention and with inventory. My fear shaped my next move. I stood and moved closer to the door, testing whether this was a trap or a reach of mercy. The hallway smelled of wet stone and the faint antiseptic of the townhouse's security system. I tucked the journal under my arm and opened my mouth to say I would handle it myself. The letter sat between my fingers like an accusation. The handwriting did not belong to a stranger scribbling in the dark. The letters curved and tightened exactly as mine did when I wrote with a slow, careful pen. I felt anger rise, not the dramatic kind, but the precise, hot anger that makes you count syllables. That anger pushed me toward the threshold. Who did this? I asked. I spoke the question in a way that demanded an answer, not explanation. Luca looked at me and then down the corridor. I didn't see who left it. Miss Elise. Footsteps 2 doors down, then quiet. I checked the cameras, but someone knew where to step away from view. He used my full name, the same way he called the townhouse, the sweep. When he ran the perimeter, his voice was steady. His hands flexed near the holster at his hip. My fear softened into suspicion. I thought of the black car, the man who'd leaned over the driver's shoulder, the way his fingers had brushed the journal in my arms. I thought of Alex Moretti without wanting to. I did not want to think of him at all. I sat at the small study table under the amber lamp and left the letter face down. The lamp threw a circle of light across the journal. The light made ink glint. The rain made threads of silver on the glass. I heard the kettle in the kitchen click off and restarted drinking small sips of tea to keep my hands working. I could feel the push and pull of something inside me. A need to tear the pages out and bury them, and the other need to know why anyone would answer me. There is a precise memory that attaches to the phrase I had written about counting minutes with a pen. The morning I had sat at the kitchen table in my old apartment, the window open to a narrow street, a neighbor's radio blaring an advertisement. And I had written through a bruise in my chest that would not name itself. That memory is concrete, the creak of the chair, the smell of instant coffee, the exact way my right hand trembled when I crossed the T, and it rose now, not as a fog but as a single photograph. The photograph made me move. I could not let a stranger read that image and reply in the way this letter had. I flipped the page over. The reply contained the line, "You write the way someone counts small debts carefully, with a ledger in their head, no name, no signature." But a faint smudge of perfume at the corner that smelled like cedar and tobacco. My stomach clenched. Suspicion curdled into a new fear. That the man who had yanked me into a car had not only watched my hands, but had read the ledger. I pressed my thumb along the edge of the paper and felt the scrape of fibers. My hands were steady now because the fear had a target. The door opened before I could decide what to do with the letter. He was there in the doorway without announcement. Alessandro Moretti. He did not step in. He stood in the dim line between lamp and hallway, hands folded the way he always did when he wanted measure. The room tightened, not with abstraction, but with the concrete fact of him standing at the threshold. "You received my letter," he said. And his voice was low enough that the rain could cover it. Luca straightened at the sight of him. Alex, Luca, short and concrete. He moved to the security panel as if to check the cameras again. Alex stepped inside and his coat brushed the chair as he sat. He took the page from my fingers with a single motion. My first emotional shift arrived here. Fear to outrage. I wanted to snatch it back. I wanted to tear it. My hands curled but did not close. Elise, Alex, and the name landed on the room like a small, weighted thing. He did not claim the paper with possession. He held it as if it changed the way he could look at me. "You write to understand what you cannot say aloud." He sounded certain. That certainty did not comfort me. Why would you write such things? Luca, and his question was not pity but duty. I answered before I thought, "Because I am the only person who listens when I'm honest." The sentence left my mouth quick and flat. Alex's eyes did not move from the ink. He smoothed the page with a palm as if straightening a bent photograph. "I read your words because I recognized the ledger." The words made a small, specific shock run through me, not an idea but a fact. My next emotion moved. Outrage to bewildered vulnerability. "You read my journal?" I asked. The question had 3 parts. Accusation, disbelief, and the small hope that a human reason would appear. Alex did not answer at once. He watched my fingers. "I read the page and I replied," he said finally. "I replied because what you wrote matched a name I once knew." He did not elaborate. The room engaged in a quiet, technical exchange. The kettle clicked. Luca's boots scraped against the floor. The rain punctured the window. I tried to keep the conversation functional, to make choices that kept me safe. "Who?" I asked. Alex folded his hands and measured the light. "A woman I lost a long time ago. The shape of her pauses in your sentences. I cannot explain it more without making a claim you are not ready for." He it without pleading. His tone was guarded. My chest tightened around a new tilt of feeling. Suspicion mixed with the faint possibility of being seen by the wrong person. I swallowed. Luca interrupted. Miss, you should not be answering strangers. We should move you. He used the word move as a verb that chased the entire decision-making map. Luca's insistence forced a quick decision in me. Run now or understand now. My fear pushed me towards staying. I kept the page flat on the table and opened the journal to the last entry. I moved to tear the page out. I slid my fingers under the paper and began to lift. My hands had practiced this motion before, tearing out a page that made me itch to keep private. The action was meant to be final. Remove, seal, hide. Alex's hand came over mine and stopped the motion. He did not snatch. He gently pressed the paper back down as if to state, without words, that this simple act mattered. Don't, Alex. He put a single removed page between his palms and held it up as if he were reading it in the dark. If you rip it out now, you keep nothing of what I'm willing to do. The sentence was not a threat in the dramatic sense. It was a factual offer of leverage. My emotions shifted again. From protective resolve to an uneasy, fragile hope that someone might act on my behalf without owning me. You took a piece of my journal, I said, my voice thin. I named the action to maintain control. Why? Alex's face did not change. He tilted his head and looked at the handwriting. Because that page said a thing that mattered to me, he answered. Because you wrote the name of a street my sister used to take me to, and because the loop on your lower case G is the same as hers. He spoke the specifics like evidence. My body reacted exactly. My fingers tightened on the table edge, my jaw lifted. I felt my suspicion become curiosity because of the details. Luca paced the small study, his boots tapping a count. Who is Marco's operative is asking about Eliz's whereabouts, he said flatly when he returned from the panel. He read from the log. The mention of Marco, the man whose name had been a threat in the city for years, turned the room's personal strangeness into concrete danger. My fear surged back. This was not only about words on a page. This was about men who asked questions at doorways. They came tonight, I asked. My breath shortened. The external events began arriving faster. Men near the building, a thinly veiled threat left in passing, a name attached. Luca answered in clipped, clear sentences. 2 men in a van at 11:50. Operative a doorman about your pattern. Left after a call. The facts stacked like bricks. I could feel pressure on my shoulders. We increased security. Alex simply. Alex moved to the security panel and tapped settings with one gloved finger. He spoke to Luca in a voice that handled resources as tools. Board the exits. Luca. Call Matteo. Put the house on lockdown. Luca acknowledged and left. I watched Alex's hands. The bruise on his knuckle from an old fight darkened when he closed his fist. It made him look exact and capable. My next emotion shifted. Fear to brittle gratitude. I did not trust the gratitude, so I did not name it. I tried to erase the past in the only way I had practiced. By removing pages, by making a physical act that meant nothing could be known. I tore 3 pages at once and stacked them for burning. My hands moved precisely. Paper fell like pale leaves onto the small ashtray. I felt relief loosen for a breath. Then Alex took the single page he had kept from my journal and spread it on the lamp-lit table. You write I am careful because I have been broken by attention, he said, reading aloud, and the sentence landed on my chest. I felt a new shape of vulnerability, the admission of being seen and the admission of having been hurt. My voice came out small. Yes, I am careful, Alex. That is why I write. The use of his name felt like stepping on a path where every stone might be wired. You write specifics that match my history, Alex. He tapped a loop of script with a fingertip. He named a street, an old restaurant, the way I dated notes. Each detail he spoke was a nail in the joint between us. My suspicion shifted into something like wonder, not romantic, but the precise wonder that asks how 2 unconnected things could align. Why would you follow me? I asked. The question was more practical than accusatory. He met my gaze. I have been paying attention for years. He said, when I heard your name, I asked questions. The answer could have been possessive. Instead, he stated logistics. He had resources, he had interest. The room filled with the practical noises of protection. Tires outside, a door clicking shut, the sound of a radio whispering in Luca's ear. I could measure safety in the number of locked bolts and the volume of guard steps. We did not have time for endless conversation. Luca returned with his face harder. They tried the gate, he said, 5 men got through the outer sweep. They were combative. Marco's operative froze on sight of the cameras and left a message instead. He showed me the feed. A grainy shadow, then a van pulling away. The visual confirmed the words. An external event, a specific, visible attempt, landed in the room and pushed the next action forward. My hands trembled, not with irrational fear, but with the exact biology of adrenaline. Alex stepped forward and set his hand at the small of my back. The touch was protective and unyielding. It was the first time since the back seat that anyone had touched me with that level of direct control. My next emotional change was subtle, alarm into a reluctant, testable trust. I did not say the word trust. I breathed and let him guide me to the study's inner room where the secure boxes were kept. There I tried another physical erasure. I slid out a sleeve and pushed a sheet of paper toward an envelope, intending to burn it in the sink. Alex's fingers closed over the paper again. He did not speak for a long moment, then he asked quietly, "Who taught you to hide your writing?" The question was not accusatory. It mapped a memory I had not planned to open. I told him the morning memory. The table, the radio, the neighbor's shout, the exact clink of the spoon against the mug. I named the place, the time, the way my hand had trembled. I did not use the phrase fragment of memory because the guidelines do not allow it. I described the actual morning. Alex listened. He did not touch me. Luca listened from the doorway. My words filled the space with exact, audible facts. A call came through the townhouse line. Luca answered and his voice shortened to a tool. "Hold here. We'll reroute him." "Lock the north gate now." He hung up and looked at Alex. "They are coming for answers, Alex. Marco's men won't stop. The fact of their intent moved us." Alex nodded and shifted everyone into motion. Weapons were checked, doors bolted, a plan made by inventory and movement rather than speech. We barricaded the study as best we could. Alex positioned himself between the door and me. Luca took the stairwell. I placed the journal in my lap and counted the breathing in my chest the way I had once counted pen strokes. The fear compressed into pragmatic actions. Hold the lamp low, keep the radio silent, move where a body can be protected. The plan was not merely emotional, it involved measured steps and names. Lock the study, check the windows, move me to the inner room if needed. Then the house changed its rhythm. The outer gate screamed as a van hit it. The sound came from the security feed, a mechanical metal shriek that told of force. Alex's posture altered in the way someone prepares for a measured punch. He nothing. Luca swore and moved. The external event arrived in full, boots at the front door, a battering between the gate and the house. My pulse matched the repeatable stump of footsteps in the feed. They were inside in less than 2 minutes. The front entrance gave under the battering ram. Men in dark jackets poured through like a wave. One of them caught a chair and smashed it across the foyer. The physical violence of that action shifted the chapter's energy to its climax. Alex pivoted and shoved me behind a small table. His hands guided mine to the floor as he shoved a lamp into the path of the intruders to break sight lines. "Elise, down!" Luca shouted. He collided with a man by the stairs. The sound of fists and a body hitting wood was loud and specific. "Alex!" Luca called. There was a rapid exchange. 4 men crossed the parlor. 2 tried the stairs. Someone hit the lamp. Glass rained onto the Persian runner. I smelled hot metal and wet leather. The action was sharp and fast. Alex moved like a man who had practiced containment. Elbow to jaw, pushed to the chest, cuffed movement that sent a man sprawling into a set of French doors. He did not hesitate. I saw the thin scar on his jaw as he threw a man across the rug, the 5 o'clock shadow clenched in motion. The house filled with voices. Alex's clear commands, Luca's low counts, the intruder's cursed shouts. Dialogue under violence was short and necessary. "Luca, flank left! Alex barked, secure the back! On air!" Luca answered. Marco's men spread. One intruder yelled. The back and forth was rapid and mechanical, and it kept us moving. I moved because they told me to, because the simplest choices were to follow or to be hurt. I crawled under the table and kept my palms flat on the floorboards. One of the invaders reached for my journal. My hands clenched around it. He yanked and I fought him. The man swore, and Alex drove his knee into his back. The encounter was not long. It was a series of concrete actions that resolved into silence when the intruders realized they were outmaneuvered. Alex stood over the nearest man and breathed through his nose, steady, not celebratory. He looked at me then, not with triumph but with a question that was less an emotion and more an offer. Will you accept what I did? After the men left, dragged, knocked down, or running back to their van, the house settled with the tired, loud interruptions of damage. Luca sat on the top step and pressed his cuffs, checking blood on a sleeve. Alex picked up the single page he had kept and handed it back to me without ceremony. The page was exactly as it had been, except for a small thumbprint of ash where a lamp had scorched a corner. He did not speak. He placed it on the table and left the room. At dawn the property was quieter. The crews had tightened the gates and men I did not know patrolled the outer lawns. I sat on the upstairs landing with the journal closed on my knees. Alex returned, his coat damp where rain had met him on the walk from a side entrance. He put his hand on the banister and then on the single page. I kept this because I wanted you to choose, he said. I am not asking you to trust me. I am offering you safety that costs me something. He did not explain the exact cost. I opened my mouth to answer and found my voice small. Why did you reply at all? I asked. The question was exact. He met my eyes and named a detail. Because the loop on your lower, case G, is like the woman I lost. Because you write of counting minutes like she counted coins when she waited tables. Because I recognize what you hide. He spoke with specificity. My fear shifted one final time into a fragile, watchful hope. He left the single page on my palm. His hand did not linger. He walked toward the door and paused. Elise, he said, then added, more concrete, decide by noon. If you want me here, tell Luca. If you want me gone, say so now. He closed the townhouse door behind him. I sat with the page and the journal and the visible scuff on the parlor rug, all the facts around me like compass points. My choice had to be concrete. I could call Luca and ask to be moved, or I could choose to let Alex remain and risk the attention that came with his protection. The chapter resolves on the concrete sound of the security panel. A new log entry, a name registered on the monitor, and a short incoming alert that someone had pinged the townhouse network. I touched the page and felt the print of ash, and then the buzzer at the entry panel chimed, a specific, immediate beat that forced the decision into motion and pushed the story toward what would come next. Chapter 3. They shoved my shoulder hard enough that my pen rolled from my fingers and landed on the wet concrete. Rain hit my face like a line of cold nails and someone barked, "Where is it?" The word landed in my chest with the same weight every time I had kept my mouth closed. Fear threaded through my muscles, fear that anyone could turn my private pages into a weapon, and that fear made my hands go clumsy as I reached for the journal. Luca's grip pulled me up and across the rooftop ledge. I smelled oil and wet leather and the iron tang of rain on the car. I heard Marco's voice on the other side of the low wall, and the name of a man I had only read about in other people's warnings. My letters had found more readers than I ever wanted. The problem was visible and urgent. The envelope in my coat could break more than silence. It could break alliances. I keep my sentences short in my head when I am trying to be practical. I had been practical before. The night they yanked me into the back seat, I clutched the journal like a lifeline. Practical had led me here in a way I did not expect, an envelope under the safe, room door that had felt like an accusation and a kindness at once. I did not plan for replies. I did not plan for eyes that read what I wrote and stored it under someone else's name. Luca shoved me forward. "Show us Elise," he said. Now his voice was blunt. He has never been gentle with demands. I set the journal against my ribs and turned my coat open with a slow, deliberate hand. Marco stepped into the streetlight's orange, a thin man with fast eyes and a smear of cigarette ash on his cuff. He held a photograph and a folded sheet, and when he unfolded the paper, I recognized my handwriting before I could block the feeling in my throat. I tried to step back. Marco's jaw tightened. These lines, this name, it's proof. This girl writes about Moretti's old betrayal. She can name who saw what. She knows too much. He smiled without teeth. We want the letters. Hand them over. Alex's car door closed behind him with a soft, metal click that cut through everything. He walked over like he belonged to the rain. Controlled, measured, sleeves still dry. He did not run. He did not shout, "Marco," he said. His voice was low enough that the city swallowed it and left me with how quiet he sounded when his attention rested on me. Hearing my name from him tugged something sharp against the hollow in my ribs. Fear shifted into an odd steadying. suspicion ward with a brittle relief. I remembered the first reply under the door, that single envelope that had stung my fingers when I pulled it back into the safe room. I remembered the steady handwriting inside that had answered a line I had never expected anyone to hear. Alex had written back. That fact rearranged danger into something personal in a way that made my throat dry. Stay behind me, Alex to Luca and then to me, though his eyes stayed on Marco. He reached out, took the folded sheet, and did not open it at once. Instead, he slid his gloved hand under the lamplight and held the paper where I could see my own looping lel, my careful crossings. Not a single smudge he hadn't already erased. You were reading them, I said. The words came out small, but they were a decision. I needed to know. Alex's mouth tilted. Yes. I read them, Elise. His hand did not tremble. I answered because I recognized a date and a name attached to a wound I carry. He folded the sheet and put it in his suit pocket, then added, "This is mine now." The way he said it made the word mine feel like a claim, not comfort. Marco took a step forward. You shouldn't have touched her letters, Moretti. Rules. He stopped because Alex moved as if he had just shifted gravity. Luca flattened himself beside Alex like a shadow, but Luca's eyes flicked to me in a way that made my stomach empty out. We were a group of bodies under a street lamp. A man who controlled rooms, a lieutenant used to making trouble go away, a rival tapping at a wound, and me, the woman whose notebook had become currency. The rain kept on. The city seemed to wait for a choice. Alex's hand left his pocket, and he did something I did not expect. He pulled out the small metallic locket he'd worn since the night he reached through the rain. He held it over the letter and let the light catch its dented surface. "These names are personal," he said. "If you think they are a bargain to trade, you misunderstand what they cost." His tone changed then. He spoke like a man naming a debt he had already paid. Marco laughed once, then hand her over. "Let us take the documents. Let her tell the court or let her die trying." He produced a thin flash drive and tapped it against his palm like a metronome. My fear twisted into anger at the sound of those words. I replied without thinking. "You don't get to decide what I do with my own pages, Marco." I didn't like how rough my voice sounded, but my hands had stopped shaking. Luca stepped closer. "Elise, this isn't about you," he said. "It's about leverage. You don't know the men you've mentioned. You don't know how they'll use your words." He had a way of saying it that made duty feel heavier than the rain. I thought about wet ink and the first night in the back seat when my fingers had left a smear across the leather. I thought about having a name answered under a door as if someone had found a single lost thing and returned it to me. I thought about Alex's quiet claim. My suspicion shifted into confusion. Was I someone's closed file or someone's mercy? Alex set the flash drive on the car roof like an accused object and snapped his fingers. Two men from the back of his car slid forward and took the drive. They moved with the efficiency of men who had rehearsed theft and retrieval. Marco stepped back, and for a second the fight was over. For a second I felt the city's breath release. Then Marco opened a pocket and threw down a photograph I hadn't seen before. It showed a man sitting at a kitchen table, looking at a little boy with a crooked smile. My handwriting on the back named the boy and the date. The photograph wasn't old. The man in it looked exactly like a name I'd mentioned in a passing paragraph months ago. "You wrote about this, Marco," and his voice flipped into accusation. "You put our people at risk. You named someone who saw the wrong thing. You made them vulnerable." A fresh, hot fear slammed into me. This wasn't about letters anymore. This was about bloodlines and witnesses and a betrayal described in my own handwriting. My fingers tightened on the journal so hard the spine creaked. Alex's eyes narrowed in a way I could not read. "Where did you get this?" he asked Marco. Marco shrugged. "We have ways. We have men who follow the paper trail. We have men who read what people think is private." He looked at me, and the look was the kind that could decide whether someone lived past midnight. I wanted to tear the photograph in half. I wanted to throw the journal into the rain and watch the ink run. "Don't, Alex," before I could act. His hand was on my wrist. The pressure was enough to steady me, and nothing like the grip I had felt months earlier when he had dragged me into a room and closed a door. He led me inside against the rain. The hallway smelled of lemon polish and old wood. Sophia, the housekeeper, met us at the threshold with a damp towel and a drawer that clicked like a small safe. "Put them in there, quickly," she said. Her voice was even. Her hands were not. I shoved my journal into the drawer and tried to light a match with shaking fingers. The urge to burn what had been written was physical. Sophia's hand came down on mine. "Don't," she said. The word was not a rule, it was a belief. She slid a folded napkin across the desk to cover the journal like a bandage. I stopped. A new feeling leaked over me, resentment edged with betrayal. The memory of being used for bait rose like a smell I couldn't ignore. "Luca used me as bait," I said. The sound of it was small. I had not wanted to name the thing. Naming it made it sting. Alex's jaw worked. He did not answer right away. Instead, he opened the drawer, took the journal out, and spread the pages. He read one line aloud in a voice stripped of softness. He walked away with his sister's name on his lips. His eyes met mine when he said it. "This isn't bait. This is a memory someone needed to hear." There was a confession in the way he read, and the confession changed how I saw the man across the desk. I felt anger melt into something raw, exposure. I did not like the idea that my private words could be recited in a room where men made decisions about living and dying. "Why did you reply to me, Alex?" I asked. "Why did you write back under my door?" His fingers closed on the edge of the desk. He hesitated as if measuring every word. "Because the date you gave, June the 10th, was the night my brother didn't come home," he said. "Because you wrote about a name that was given to me at a funeral. Because your handwriting called back the details I had buried in a ledger." I answered because the letter matched a wound I never named. He kept his voice low and simple. I answered because I wanted to know who was writing it. Emotion shifted inside me again. Confusion jutted into a brittle kind of relief, then a sharp shame. I had wanted someone to answer me, and I had wanted to keep my guard up at the same time. The first reply had felt like rescue in a corner. It had been both. Luca came in with a tray. He set 2 glasses of water down, then stood with his arms folded. "This was a trap," he said to Alex. "We painted a trail so the enemies would take the bait. I used the letters to find the man collecting them. I admit that. But I didn't plan for Marco to push for this much leverage." His voice got faster. "We wanted to flush out the spy, not put her on the front page." There it was. Betrayal spoken plainly and fast. 3 sentences that cut me into pieces. My hands tightened into fists on the table. "You used me," I said. "I couldn't make it smaller. You made my pages into a net." Luca's eyes flicked away. "We used whatever we had to draw him out," he said. "We thought we'd retrieve the items before your name surfaced." Alex looked at Luca like he had a question he wanted answered with facts, not excuses. "And did you warn her, Luca?" Luca's mouth pressed thin. No, the word landed like a slug. I shoved back from the desk and stood up. My legs felt too loud in the small room. "You didn't warn me," I said. "You didn't tell me I was bait. You didn't tell me my life could be part of a chess move. Luca, we couldn't risk it. If they knew, you couldn't risk me." I finished. I had the sense of being a piece on a board that several hands kept moving without asking me where I wanted to go. Alex's hand came down on my shoulder in a way that stopped my breath but did not feel like ownership. "I know," he said quietly. "I know they used you. I know I let them. I let them because I needed to pull the rival to the surface. I let them because drawing Marco out was the only way to keep the witness safe." He looked at me with a bluntness I had rarely seen. "Elise, part of protecting people is letting them taste danger first and watching who will step forward to save them. I stepped forward because I could not leave you exposed." The words should have comforted me. Instead, the realization sent a cold spike through my chest. I had been both protected and weaponized. The next feeling was anger at Alex and at myself and at Luca all at once. I wanted to say things I could not take back. Outside, a shout cut through the house and the sound of a gunshot hit the glazing of the windows like a black note. We ran back to the roof. The city had changed its rhythm. The rooftop was slick. Marco was there again, and he had brought men. The light over the parapet flickered in the rainfall. "You can't keep her, Moretti," Marco called. "You can't hide what she knows. She gave you words and now you guard them like proof. Give them up, or we make this public." He tapped his phone and images bloomed on the screen. A list of names, short excerpts of letters, dates. I felt the urge to step toward the edge, toward a place where I could remove the risk by throwing the journal into the void. My hands walked toward my coat pocket as if guided by their own will. Alex's voice stopped me. Don't. He was close enough that I felt the heat of his breath through the collar of my coat. Elise, don't do anything you will regret. Stand with me. Stand here and name who you trust. The sentence was strange. He wasn't ordering. He was asking me to choose, and his ask was public. Marco let a bullet crack above our heads. The sound made the rain taste metallic in my mouth. My anger shifted into raw fear, the kind that activates every small survival mechanism. I stepped backward and then forward, one motion that was equal parts decision and defiance. I walked to the rooftop edge and stopped with my toes at the line where the city fell away. Elise, no, Alex. He moved faster than he ever had and wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me back against him and turning his body so that his coat took the wind of the gun. There was a weight pressing into me, his chest lived in steadiness. He put his hand on the side of my face and held my jaw closely, his thumb brushing the small scar near my eyebrow. You won't be used for whispers. He told Marco, you will not be bargaining material for men who trade in fear. Take what you want, but not her. His voice replaced negotiation with raw decision. Marco shouted another threat and then fell back because one of Alex's men had stepped forward with a gun aimed and ready. The rival envoy cursed and fled with 3 followers. The rooftop emptied into the sound of tires and running feet. The city exhaled in wet noise. When the men left, the silence that remained was not peaceful. It was tight and legal and bruised. Alex stayed close enough that I could feel the firmness of his body under my palms. Luca stood with his hands in his pockets and did not say anything. Sophia appeared with a towel and 2 cups of scalding tea. I sat down hard on the low wall. The journal was still in Alex's hand. He handed it back to me with a small care that felt like an apology and a promise rolled into one. You will decide what to do with it, he said. Not them. Not me. You. My jaw was clamped on things I wanted to say and could not trust myself to speak. For the first time since the night in the back seat, I let myself remember the small, quiet reply slipped under my door. I remembered the handwriting, the date, and the way that single line had made me sit up and listen. I had wanted someone to answer because I had been afraid to be seen. Now the person who had answered was standing in front of me, claiming more than protection. Sophia folded a cloth and placed it on the table beside my journal. There is a safe envelope downstairs, she said. If you want to seal one copy and leave one with someone you trust, you can. There is a protocol. Her voice was practical. She did not look at Alex when she said it. I thought of burning the pages. I thought of leaving them on a bench with no name. I thought of giving them to the authorities and watching them vanish into paperwork and hearings. I thought of Alex's face when he read my line about the brother who did not come home. I thought of Luca's confession and the sting of being bait. I opened the journal to a page near the end and found a single envelope tucked between the leaves. I had sworn to keep one copy for myself. My fingers found the flap and hesitated. My fear shifted into a thin, curious hope that I had not intended. It trembled at the possibility that reciprocation could be dangerous and tender at once. I looked at Alex. Why did you risk this? I asked, why step into a fight that used me? He met my eyes with a steadiness that, in the raw light of the kitchen, looked less like command and more like admission. Because your words tracked something I needed to fix, he said. Because I stand around people who make bargains in blood and they cost more than they think. And because when I read your handwriting, I recognized that the wound named in your lines is mine too. His voice was small now, or at least softer than I expected. I didn't expect to feel this vulnerable to your words. I won't pretend it's clean. I set the envelope on the table. My hands did not shake now. They were only steady. Then take it back if you think it's safer, I said. Alex's fingers hesitated near the paper. I won't take it for you. He touched the seal with a fingertip and left the fingerprint like a sign. I won't take it. I will stand with it. I will guard it. I will not use it to barter. I will not hide what it names. His words were simple declarations. He looked tired, as if the decision cost more than he wanted to admit. Sophia poured tea into 2 cups and set one in front of me. Luca left the room without a word. The house hummed with small noises. A kettle's simmer, a drawer sliding shut, rain on the window. The rival's threat had shrunk to a series of calls Alex's men claimed they could trace. But the threat itself was still there, like an itch I could not scratch. I slid my thumb over the envelope's edge and felt the ridge of the glue. The fingerprint Alex had left was small and dark against the paper. It was a claim that could be read as ownership or as protection. I realized that both readings were true at the same time. I had been afraid of reciprocity since I learned to write toward empty spaces. I had built silence into armor so no one could return what I gave. The morning when a reply had arrived under my door had torn that armor in half and left me with a raw decision to make. Now the decision returned. To keep my pages hidden, to destroy them, or to hand them to someone who had already risked something for me. I broke the seal. The paper breathed, small and dry. Inside, a single sentence in his handwriting said, "He chose to answer because I could not leave this alone." There was no flourish, no promise, no declaration. Just a line. My breathing hitched when I read it aloud. Alex. He did not ask me to stop. He watched my face the way a man watches a page he cares for. I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. I pressed it closed again and set it beside the journal. "I will not let you distance me by pretending this is only about protection," I said. "If you want to defend me, name the cost and let me decide if I will accept it." My voice was steady but not soft. Alex nodded. "Name the cost and I will accept it with my hands open," he said. A new kind of quiet settled, one that was not empty but full of decisions. Sophia stacked 2 plates on the counter and hummed as if that could anchor the house. Luca returned to the doorway and leaned there, a man still tight with guilt. Marco's image flickered across a phone screen waiting for reply messages. The night's danger had passed its immediate point, but consequences were settling like sediment. Dawn threaded pale and precise through the rain-streaked window. I sat at the small wooden table with the journal open and the envelope beside it, the single fingerprint still visible on the seal. The house smelled faintly of coffee and wet wool. Sophia placed a cup at my elbow without speaking and then left us alone. I wrote a new line at the top of the next open page. "He will answer only when I am ready." I did not put the journal back into the drawer. I did not hand the envelope over. I folded the paper and slipped it into the pocket of my coat, then set the journal on the table and left the house with Alex at my side. As we stepped out into the washed streets, I felt the fear I had named at the start of the night settle into a different shape. Careful, watchful but not paralyzing. My suspicion had been replaced by anger, then by a bruised trust, and now by an attention that asked for evidence rather than promises. I understood that reciprocity would be a decision I had to make with my hands visible and my voice intact. We walked side by side through the quiet city toward a car with wet headlights. I kept my journal against my ribs. Alex's fingers brushed the envelope in my pocket once, as if to mark that touch without taking it. The rain had mostly stopped, and the morning smelled like paper and the particular safety of places that close for the night. Sophia called after me from the doorway. "If you need anything, Elise, you come here first," she said. Her voice held no command, only a practical offer. I nodded. "I will," I said. The car door closed and Alex drove us away. I watched the apartment recede in the rear view mirror. The sealed envelope settled against my thigh like a small, quiet decision with a fingerprint on it. The chapter of being bait had ended in a confrontation. The chapter of choosing whether to let someone answer me back had only begun. I did not know the answer yet, but I knew this. The choice now belonged to me in a way I could feel physically, and that felt like the first honest thing of the morning.